Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. Crown-Indigenous Relations Minister Gary Anandasangri was on the hot seat Thursday as he answered questions from the Indigenous Affairs Committee on the government's controversial Bill C-53. The proposed legislation recognizes Métis Nation governments in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario. But a number of First Nations in Ontario have taken issue with the recognition of the MNO, which they do not see as legitimate and say could affect their inherent treaty rights. Here's what Anandasangri had to say about what the legislation does not mean.
This legislation does not deal with harvesting rights, and it does not deal with land-related rights, nor will the self-government treaties of MNO, MNS, and MNA that are contemplated to have either harvesting or land use rights. The proposed legislation would only impact those who have elected to be citizens of the Métis governments.
Still in Ottawa, the Chiefs of Ontario and Attawapiskat First Nation today filed a judicial review of the Greenhouse Gas and Pollution Pricing Act. It's more commonly known as the carbon tax. They say the federal government refused to negotiate with Ontario First Nations, who call the act discriminatory and anti-reconciliatory. Many First Nations in the north still use diesel generators to heat their homes. Mohawk Council of Akwesasne Grand Chief Abraham Benedict says First Nations don't get the same rebates other Canadians receive. Indigenous Services Minister Patty Hajdu and NDP MP Charlie Angus were asked to comment on the judicial review.
Obviously, a legal analysis that will be conducted, but the fact remains that we have to continue to work on climate, both from preventing the ongoing rise in temperatures that we're seeing, but also in the readiness for First Nations communities in particular, who are facing all across this country just astronomical challenges related to climate change.
We don't have a credible heating system that works for First Nation communities. So I think what the federal government needs to do is recognize the inequity, sit down and with the Northern Chiefs and say, how do we establish fair pricing so that people can afford to heat their homes?
Residents of the Northwest Territories are a step closer to knowing who their new premier will be. There are no political parties in the NWT legislature, so its premiers are elected by MLAs. Here's our Charlotte Mort-Jacobs with a look at who's running.
Northwest Territories premier hopefuls are giving their pitches today. Each of the 4 candidates running for the top position have 20 minutes to deliver a speech outlining why they should be selected. First up, R.J. Simpson, who is Métis from Hay River. He's pointing to his work done serving as both the Minister of Justice and Education, Culture and Employment during the last Legislative Assembly. Simpson notes the lack of housing, new drugs entering the NWT, lack of healthcare professionals, cost of living, and natural disasters.
To be frank, I believe the GNWT is stretched too thin. We're trying to do too many things, and as a result, we're only doing them halfway. We need to go back to the basics. If we want to tackle the major issues, we need to focus our efforts and devote adequate staff and resources to those ends.
Kieran Tetstart from Yellowknife says he's learned a lot from being a former MLA and also losing elections. He says as premier, he would indigenize process delivery across all departments to better serve remote communities.
I envision a new range of portfolios that will address the priorities of this Assembly. This should be the norm, setting ministries based on the will of the members and therefore the people they serve, rather than the comfort of the public service. I will develop new portfolios for treaties, addictions, official languages, net zero, and red tape reduction that will be integrated into existing portfolios.
MLA for Nahunde Shane Thompson says his priorities will be to restructure GNWT, including creating a separate department for health and social services, which currently fall under the same umbrella. Thompson, who lives in Fort Simpson, was the Minister of Environment and Climate Change, as well as Municipal and Community Affairs in the last Assembly. He spoke largely on emergency management recommendations.
Wildfire management, a combination of fire breaks and prescribed burns around communities needed to be done. This can be done by working with private business to cut large trees for timber and working with individuals to cut small trees for firewood. We would work with communities to do prescribed burns to build safe or to build even larger fire breaks.
Lastly, Carolyn Wozniak of Yellowknife, who held the finance portfolio in the last assembly. She pointed to achievements like capping budgets and implementing Indigenous recruitment and retention framework, which didn't exist 4 years ago.
When I started 4 years ago, incremental budgeting approach seemed not intuitive to me. Why do we assume every year that one department should get the same funding as they've had every year before? Is that the best amount of funding? Is it working? Are they delivering what they need to deliver?
Once the question and answer session is complete, members...
What's next? MLAs will cast a secret ballot and residents will find out who their next premier will be on December 7th. MLAs will also vote for the Speaker and Cabinet on that day. Charlotte Moore-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
Still in the north, the Nunavut Land Claims Agreement is the largest land claim in Canada. It calls for a land use plan, but despite being signed 30 years ago, Nunavut still doesn't have one. Trevor Wright reports.
As long as Nunavut does not have a land use plan in place, its caribou will continue to decline, says Nunavut's first Premier, Paul Okalik. He's currently one of the World Wildlife Fund's lead specialists on the Arctic, working with communities on how to protect caribou or Tuktoy calving grounds. Hunting caribou on Baffin Island and other areas is carefully managed by the Nunavut Wildlife Management Board, who manage how many caribou Inuit can hunt. Mining companies, he says, aren't under the same restrictions when it comes to mining on calving grounds.
And these companies, they won't be here in the long run. They're just here for the ore. Once the ore's gone, they're gone. The jobs are gone. And the land that we have left, if it's calving grounds, that the habitat that the caribou need to feed is destroyed. Like, where are they going to go? Like, that's our food. So that's the basic question that we try and tackle with the communities, is how to protect what little we have left.
Currently, the plan supports a development ban on caribou calving grounds in the land use plan, which encompasses 25% of Nunavut. These are areas where caribou give birth and can feed more, characterized by its high-quality vegetation. The requirement for a land use plan precedes the territory, as outlined in the 1993 Nunavut Agreement. It's supposed to serve as the framework for development and conservation in Nunavut. However, it has seen delay after delay, with multiple drafts being formed by the Nunavut Planning Commission but not implemented. The latest ones being from 2016, 2021, and 2023.
It's overdue. In the absence of a plan, these mining companies are creeping into calving grounds themselves because there's no protection today. So, as an Inuk today on Baffin Island, I can't hunt caribou because we're trying to protect the population. But the mining company has no restrictions whatsoever on depleting the actual caribou population with accessing calving grounds. So they're depleting our caribou population without regulation.
Food is expensive in Nunavut, so for Inuit, caribou, or Tuktoy, is a staple and hunting is more viable.
This is one part of the country where we can do something about our traditional grounds as Indigenous peoples. This is one place on our country where we can say, off limits here. This is our traditional part of our land, or our calving grounds that our forefathers would never venture into because they did not want to disturb the calving activity of the caribou, for instance. And this is something how we can tackle it through the land use plan and tackling it with the current tools that we are allowed to use today.
The Nunavut Planning Commission submitted its 2023 Nunavut Land Use Plan for approval to Nunavut Tungavik Incorporated and the territorial and federal governments in June. In an email to APTN, the federal government said they're currently reviewing the plan with their counterparts and add they recognize the importance of having a land use plan for Nunavut. Trevor Wright, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
Residents of the small hamlet of Conlin in northern Alberta are saying that bureaucratic delays in permits and inspections have forced them to continue to live in unsafe shacks and trailers, despite having 15 modular homes ready to be delivered. The mostly Métis community of about 160 people say their current homes are unsafe, with many that have black mold, some neighbors sharing power with an extension cord. Some units are housing up to 19 people. In a press conference, they asked the municipality of Wood Buffalo to speed up permits before the extreme cold hits.
I want the RMWB, so the Regional Municipality of Wood Buffalo, to know that all Albertans are watching this situation. I want our community and the world to know we have the houses built and ready to deliver. We just need the RMWB to cooperate and expedite our permits and work with us so that we can give our community members a safe and healthy place to sleep.
We've got the houses built and waiting to be placed, and yet we're told we can't put them on the land we bought because this or that permit isn't in place. How is it that a bureaucrat in Fort McMurray who is going home to their nice home at night is telling me that I have to spend another winter like this?
Time for a quick break. Still to come, an elder makes the leap of a lifetime. Stick around. Welcome back. Earlier this week, the first ever Indigenous Chiropractic Caucus established themselves with an official signing ceremony on Parliament Hill in Ottawa. The Indigenous Chiropractic Caucus, or ICC, will work to increase access to musculoskeletal care for Indigenous peoples across Canada. The group plans to advocate for the federal government to reinstate coverage for chiropractic services under their non-insured health benefits plan for First Nations and Inuit. It will also provide a forum to support the professional development of Indigenous chiropractors and will mentor Indigenous chiropractic students. ICC co-chair Dr. Jennifer Ward has her own chiropractic clinic in Opaskwayak Cree Nation in northern Manitoba.
So there is a lot of inequities in health for Indigenous peoples, and I think that a lot of that is rooted in systemic issues that we have in Canada, both political, economic, and social. And so with the Indigenous Chiropractic Caucus, we're hoping that we can lobby and advocate and support for Indigenous people to receive an option that's non-pharmacological, non-invasive, options for their musculoskeletal pain. There's a lot of patients in our communities. There are a lot of people in our communities who experience MSK pain, and the burden of MSK pain is very high. In fact, the World Health Organization listed as one of the top conditions in the world.
Turning now to an inspiring story out of Auckland, New Zealand, where an elder from northern BC visiting in the Kiwi state recently completed his very first skydive. Sarah Connors has the story on how he's proving age is just a number.
Jerry Porter is living proof the sky really is the limit. On Tuesday, the Casca elder from Lower Post, BC, fulfilled a lifelong dream in Auckland, New Zealand.
The instruction was perfect. I did that all, and it was just coming out of the plane when you're just free falling and you see it just going down.
It's nothing new for the adventure seeker. In 2018, the then 57-year-old bungee jumped off the Auckland Harbour Bridge, a 40-meter plunge into the Waitemata Harbour.
Because I went backwards, and I didn't know if I made it till I hit the water when I got some salt water up my nose and in my ears. I know I made it.
Now, the 62-year-old says he's truly living a dream. For decades, Porter struggled with alcoholism. His addiction led him to be estranged from his wife and children, who are Maori from New Zealand. They've since reconnected and inspired him to embark on a sobriety journey.
Doing what I want to do is to be sober and be the best grandpa around.
Everybody comes Jerry in 3, 2, 1, go! Have fun.
Now 3 years sober, Porter says life is better than ever. In the last year, he jumped 200 meters off the Auckland Sky Tower, sailed from Australia to New Zealand on a Disney cruise, and guided extended family on a sheep hunt in northern BC.
I just wanted, as soon as I got sober, I wanted to try different things when I'm sober, not half drunk and you're brave and you want to do it.
Everybody comes Jerry in 3, 2, 1, go!
An elder in age, it's his love for adventure that keeps him young at heart. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Awesome work, Jerry. I get a queasy stomach just watching the video. Time to step aside for one more quick break, but stick around. Coming up, an Inuk artist is being celebrated. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Faithful viewer Clarence Jones sent in another stunning shot. Setting sun as a backdrop to a totem pole located in Gitxsan Nation. Thanks, Clarence. Keep all of those great photos coming by sending your pictures to share@aptn.ca. Now let's take a look at your Friday weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, +8 for Halifax, 2 with showers in Fredericton, 18 below with the sun out in Kuujjuaq, snow and 6 below in Nain, +8 in Montreal, 5 below in Val-d'Or, 2 above with snow in Sault Ste. Marie, +3 with snow in North Bay. Flurries and 1 below in Thunder Bay, -4 with snow in Sioux Lookout, -10 in God's Lake and Norway House, -3 for Winnipeg, Brandon and Dauphin, 7 below with the sun out in Regina and Saskatoon, -6 and sunny for Meadow Lake, 5 below with snow in Buffalo Narrows. In northern Alberta, -12 in High Level, sunny and 6 below in Fort Mac, -4 in Edmonton, -1 and cloudy in Lethbridge, +6 with showers in Vancouver, 0 with snow in Kamloops, -4 with flurries in Prince George, 2 below and snow in Smithers, -19 in Old Crow, 12 below in Whitehorse, -13 for Yellowknife, 16 below and snow in Wrigley, 14 below with snow in Sachs Harbor, -11 in Paulatuck, -4 in Chesterfield, 17 below with snow in Arviat, -3 in Resolute, -2 in Arctic Bay. Warmer in Arctic Bay than Winnipeg tomorrow. Well, a retrospective exhibition of the works of late Inuit artist Nick Sigwar recently opened at the National Gallery of Canada in Ottawa. It spans the more than 40-year career of the prolific artist. APTN's Fraser Needham has more.
Exhibition curator Christine Lalone says 2 common themes can be found throughout most of Nick Sigwar's work.
That really is, I believe, his unique talent, in that humor and horror are really only 2 of the elements that you find in his work. And our experience for almost everything he created could be described almost as riding a pendulum. You know, we're attracted to a piece. Sometimes it's by something that we see as very funny. Other times it's by something that we see that is a little bit fearsome.
On display are over 100 different artworks of the books, sculptures, drawings, and paintings of Sikyark. He was part of the first generation of Inuit artists to introduce their visual expressions to the world. Sadly, Sikyark passed away in 2013. But Lalone says, with the help of his family, Sikyark's enormous contributions to the art world are being kept alive.
There's something serendipitous about 10 years later, working so closely with his sons and daughters. And often in the last, especially the last few years when we've been working together on it, they contributed enormously to every aspect of the show, the catalog, and the film. I have often thought that Nick would be happy
Nick Sicuark, Humor and Horror, is on display at the National Gallery of Canada until March of next year. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Earlier this month, the federal government committed $740,000 to review the possibility of a Winnipeg area landfill search. The announcement came on the heels of Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew's pledge to search for the remains of 2 First Nations women who are suspected to have been victims of an alleged serial killer. APTN Investigates was there in the spring with their episode, Voices of the Landfill, by Brittany Guillot. You'll be able to watch it again tomorrow night. Here's a preview.
Camp Morgan is a permanent blockade set up at the Brady landfill, and it's been here since December 18th, and it's in honor of my mother, Morgan Harris, who was murdered by the serial killer back in December, as well as 3 other women. And this is also a tribute to all MMIWG2S and anyone else who has been lost to this tragedy.
For the last 5 months, Cambria Harris, along with community members and supporters, have been calling on government officials, the city, and the police to search the landfills for their loved ones. Camp Morgan was set up to honor the victims and help raise awareness for the missing and murdered.
So I know that you're out here quite often, but how does it feel today to be out here?
It's disheartening to still have to be here 4 months later, over 100 days, and you know that these women are still not retrieved and given proper peace and closure. So it's sad every time I come here, and it's very spiritual and very grounding, and it definitely brings you down a little bit, for sure.
And you can catch the repeat viewing of APTN Investigates Voices of the Landfill tomorrow night following the APTN National News. Over to our Ottawa studio now, where Annette Francis is standing by to give us a look ahead as to what's coming up tonight on Nation to Nation.
Coming up after the news on Nation to Nation, we'll talk to a lawyer about the ongoing litigations against the leadership of Peters First Nation in British Columbia in relation to denial of membership and breach of fiduciary duty. The chief of the Nipissing First Nation will give us an update on the status of the Robinson-Huron Treaty Settlement. And a First Nations group has released a study on Western Canadian gas exports and opportunities. That's coming up on tonight's episode of Nation to Nation.
Thanks, Annette. Sounds like a lot going on tonight, and you can catch that right away. That's all the time we have for your Thursday edition of your APTN National News. For news anytime, head over to our website, aptnnews.ca. That's where you'll also find a special page dedicated to next week's vote for a new national chief of the AFN. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy McGuitch, thanks for being with us. Stick around. Nation to Nation is up next. We'll see you back here tomorrow.